Let's create some vintage backgrounds using patterned paper and one stamp set to create these gorgeous Valentine's Day cards. Hey everyone, it's Joy here. This is the stamp set I'm talking about. This is the Background Builders 1 from scrapbook.com. And earlier today on scrapbook.com's live, they were talking about this and sharing some stuff, and I was totally inspired. So I am going to be creating 6 cards. I'm using some vintage patterned paper. I'm using some paper from the Berry Sweet patterned paper, and then also from the Oak Lane. And from the vintage patterned paper, I'm using the A2 size and the 6x8 size. Okay, I am going to start first with the little script that's in that Background Builders 1, and we're just going to build some backgrounds, you guys. I ended up making 6. I had to stop myself there because I realized then I had to put cards together, but I was having so much fun. So again, we're creating vintage Valentine cards, building these backgrounds, which I'm going to show the backgrounds mostly. I'm not going to show any die cutting really on camera. I'll show you my sentiments, and then I'll show you putting the cards together because you want to see a finished card most times. I think that's fair, and I love how these turned out. So I just kind of stamped over this really pretty polka dot paper. It's A2 size. All of my cards are A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I started with some salvaged patina. Then I'm using vintage photo with the background that looks like splatter. And I'm just going to put that in a few areas. You could go heavy or light. Again, you know, this is just all personal preference, but I was just having a lot of fun. Then I'm using bundled sage and the Harlequin background, which is my favorite out of the backgrounds. And I'm just going to put it in a few spots here. And you saw me taking my rag and lightly dabbing it off. I'm doing that because I don't want a perfect stamp. This is a vintage background. I want some areas to be lighter and some areas to be darker. I want it to look faded and old. Then I'm going to take vintage photo and my little sponge dauber and just ink blend the edges. And I will do that on all the backgrounds. I'm not going to show that though on all the backgrounds. How cute is that? Okay, more of that vintage pattern paper and the Harlequin stamp along with bundled sage distress oxide ink. It is gorgeous. This is my favorite background. Number one, the background is beautiful by itself. And this I was inspired by Cody from scrapbook.com on their live today when he was doing this. I thought, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. I want to make those cards today. Look at that background. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I could just do backgrounds like this all day long, but I figured you guys would want to see other things, so I did other things. But I think this is my favorite one for sure. I think it turned out really pretty. And then just ink blending some of the edges. Some edges I'll go a little darker, some a little lighter, just kind of depending on the paper itself. But it does help to start with patterned paper. You can create your own pattern paper with this, but already having some and just adding some details to it really makes this whole process go a lot faster. Okay, I am using the brick stencil, and you can see that I'm using an acrylic block. It's faster to me, and because I'm not worried about a perfect stamp, this is the perfect time to use an acrylic block. You don't need your MISTI for this unless you want it completely perfect. Then you could stamp it multiple times in the same area. I'm taking my rag and just kind of wiping the edge off so it's not a perfectly straight edge. At the ending, I kind of want the bricks to fade in and out. And I like the flower on the right-hand side of this paper, so I kind of want to keep that intact. I don't want to cover that up, but I like bringing the brick in with the Victorian velvet over that writing. I think it's so pretty. Again, just using my rag to lightly dab areas so it has faded areas and not. But look at how pretty this is. This looks like it came like this. And just pick whatever color you like, the colors that you're going for. I am going for Valentine type colors. Isn't that pretty? So that's what I'm going to be doing. Then we have our striped paper here, and I'm using the scripty font with the Victorian velvet. And I'm just going to go all the way up this whole card. This is more of a subtle background between the writing and the stripe, but I love a good stripe and I love a good polka dot, so I had to choose this one. It just was really fun to me. It's a little more muted, but you know, depending on your style and what you like, it could totally be right up your alley. I like it. I'm going to use the Harlequin just a little bit with bundled sage. I think I used, yes, just in a few areas, but I'm going to be honest, when I'm looking at my card right now, I think most of it's covered up. Not all of it, but this is a really subtle one. You can't really tell that it's a Harlequin background on here, so you could leave it off, but I do like the green on the background. So you could even do the brick one and that would be pretty. Then we have our striped one, our pink and white stripe. I'm going to start with Vintage Photo and the Harlequin, and I'm going to work my way all the way up. I actually do 2 of these backgrounds because I wanted to try it with bundled sage and spritzing it with my Distress sprayer. Because it's Distress Oxide ink, it's water reactive, and I kind of wanted to see how that looked, and I liked it. It wasn't wildly different from this one, but I did really like it. But look at that pretty background. Okay, let's do the second one. So I'm going to ink up my stamp and then just lightly spritz it so it's a little bit of water, and then I'm going to stamp, and it just, I don't know, it gives it, I want to say it's almost a softer look in some ways because the water and the ink kind of squish out a little bit, and so I don't know, I kind of liked that look. It just, they're both beautiful. And then I was trying to do something on the background. I didn't love it, so I ended up kind of stamping over the whole background like I did the other one. I just did it weirdly. But it didn't turn out how I wanted to. Sorry, my head's in the way. I was trying to line things up. I'm going to ink that again. You can see little bits of it. I'm going to stamp my ink pad, spritz it, wipe a little bit off, then spritz it, and then go to town. But I love these backgrounds. These were so much fun to make. Oh my gosh, these were so much fun to make. So let me get that last stamp in there. How cute is that? And then I'm going to go back and add a few different things to some of these backgrounds. So I have my salvage patina and I have the dots, and I'm just going to add a few of those on this background. I did like the addition. I didn't do it on all, but of the salvage patina, I did like the addition of that. And I just stamped it in random spots because I really wanted it to be random. This one, I'm just going to do the tiniest bit, even a little tiny bit onto the flowers. I really didn't want to mess with that a whole lot, even though I'm going to have die cuts covering it up. Then Victorian Velvet with that same splatter stamp, just putting it in areas and just kind of playing with it. And then Victorian Velvet again on this background here. Oh, this background is so pretty. Can you see that Harlequin stamp on the back? It is just stunning. Okay, so I'm taking 3 greens of ink on some cardstock and I'm inking it up really fast. You could do this with a ink blending tool. I'm just using my ink to paper because I'm going to die cut a bunch of leaves, and I'm going to do that off camera, but I wanted to show you this. This is a really quick and fast way. It's very inky, but it gets your cardstock inked up, and I like that it has texture to it because it's not perfectly covered. And so I used bundled sage, shabby shutters, and old paper. Then I'm taking my white Lustre marker and splattering this onto the background. You can't see a ton of it right now, but when it dries really bright white. I love the addition of some bright white on old distressed or vintage type cards. It really pops and it gives you this really clean look against all of kind of the grunge and vintage and all of that. I love that. So I did a lot of white splatter. In my MISTI on some craft cardstock, I'm going to stamp 6 sentiments. This is the Happy Little Sentiments stamp set. I'm going to white heat emboss this. I'm using Gina K's craft cardstock, and I'm also going to be using that for the base of my cards as well. This stamp set I used on last year's, in September, scrapbook.com's SBC Fest. I was an instructor for that, and this was my sentiment that was in my kit for that. So it has a lot of sweet sentiments and I think they're really cute. they're not particularly Valentines at all, but totally works for Valentine's. So one says, so happy you're you. The other one says, you're my favorite thing. When I count my blessings, I count you twice. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Your smile brightens my day, and wish you were here. So I think those are really fantastic sentiments. Okay, let me take my heat tool and heat this up. And then once that has cooled down, I'll lightly dust off my cardstock, and I'm going to be using the Nested Vintage Label dies. 2 sizes will fit these sentiments. That little one won't, but I can get these. I'm going to tape these all in place with my mint tape. It's a low tack tape from scrapbook.com. And then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine and die cut out all of my sentiments. And I'm going to rough those up with my scissors just a little bit, but I did that off camera just because we don't need this video to be forever long. So that is done. Now I've laid out all of my cards here. They are all trimmed down slightly smaller than an A2 size. They are adhered to a piece of craft cardstock, and I did distress the edges of that a little bit with some scissors. And then I did the same thing for the sentiment. So I laid everything out. I actually took a picture with my phone so I could remember my layouts because a lot of cards. Here's all of my greenery. I have die cut those from the Sprigs die and the Layered Roses die. And remember, I inked up that cardstock, and that's what I used to die cut from. It was just easier than ink blending each one of these. And again, because it wasn't inked perfectly, you can see on some of the leaves that there is variegation in color, which I really, really love. So here is card number 1. I obviously am speeding this up a little bit, but that way you can see how I'm putting these together and the way I'm laying them out. I am using 1mm foam adhesive behind any of the hearts, and I'm using 2mm foam adhesive most of the time, except for here on my sentiment. And then I can just start laying out these hearts. These hearts are the Heart Doilies die. There's 4 different hearts. You'll see them all on here. I have die cut them from the different patterned papers that we're using on the backgrounds and just kind of alternating on the cards on what I thought would stand out against the background. These are perfect hearts for a Valentine card. They're very vintagey, and I think it's totally perfect, a perfect addition to these type of cards. So let's just get this laid out. So some of them have 2 hearts, like a really big heart and then a smaller one. 4 of those have that, and 2 cards have just 3. Yes, 3 hearts. They're a little bit smaller. All of them have 3, some sort of 3 leaves, greenery, and I'm just tucking that around. This is really easy to put together once you have everything just laid out. And then everything comes together so nicely. These will be adhered to a A2 size card base. And then once I'm done putting all of these together, I'll show them to you, not sped up. At the end, we'll do a little showcase of the cards. That way you can really see how everything comes together. But look at that white sentiment. Having that and the white splatter on the background is so pretty. It just pops, again, I mentioned earlier, just pops against all of the distressing on the background. I love this color palette. It's really soft and pretty. The pink hearts that are die cut from the pink, or the hearts that are die cut from the pink and white striped patterned paper, like this one here, I just took a little bit of the vintage photo and just ink blended that like I did all of the edges of the paper. Same thing, because it was a little too clean compared to everything else. I think it's one thing to have a sentiment or splatter, things like that, but that was just a little too, it just didn't look like it was finished. So I just did a little bit of distressing with vintage photo on that. And I'm going to tuck these guys, and we've got one more card to go, and then we can take a look at these up close. I chose to not add any sequins or anything shiny. I didn't feel like this card needed it. You could add that, but for me, I just didn't need that. I thought the white splatter kind of filled in that spot. Look at these 3 together, these 3 hearts. Oh, I love them in that little sentiment. And then let's tuck in our last little bit of greenery. And then let's take a look at these up close. These are so cute. Oh my gosh, look at this. That striped patterned paper on the background and all of the fun stamps from that Background Builders 1. This is my favorite card right here. I love that. I love the layout. I love the background. We have 2 of these backgrounds. So pretty. We have 3 hearts there. Again, this is from the Heart Doilies die. And I love the different color of greenery with the Oxide inks. How pretty is that? And all the fun sentiments. These just turned out fabulous. I had such a good time creating these vintage backgrounds for these Valentine's Day cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye.